I grew up with Traitor as childhood sweethearts. When the college entrance examination was approaching, he forced me to give up the guaranteed admission quota for his stepsister. On the day of the college entrance examination, my examination paper was torn to shreds by the person sitting behind me, and my grades were invalidated. After the news spread, that person even cried and claimed that I had been bullying him all along, and that he had resorted to extreme measures only after enduring long-term torture. All of a sudden, a massive wave of online violence came crashing down on me. My parents also became increasingly disappointed in me. Feeling helpless, I jumped off a building and committed suicide. However, his stepsister was completely unaffected. Not only did she achieve a class leap, but she also reached the peak of her life in one fell swoop. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself back on the day when Raider asked me out. Phoenix, your grades are already good enough to get into Tingshui University and Peking University. Just get the guaranteed admission quota to Viper. Traitor said as he grabbed my hand under the streetel twide that night. Both of my parents are school directors, and it's obvious to everyone who the guaranteed admission quota will go to. Traitor knew this and deliberately bypassed my parents and directly begged me. He was certain that I would be obedient to him. And indeed, I did as he asked. Firstly, having fulfilled I wanted to rely on my own real strength to get into Tingshui University and Peking University and get rid of the prejudice. Secondly, there was still an outstanding debt of gratitude between Traitor and me. So I confirmed with him. Traitor, I promise you. But the debt I owe you will be completely paid off. Traitor's originally relaxed eyebrows suddenly furrowed, and his tone was anxious. Phoenix, how can such a small thing be considered repayment? Anyway, head into Silverland session. With your grades, getting into those universities is a piece of cake. We have such a good relationship. And you still. He seemed to realize that he had said something wrong. But his tone still sounded as if it was only natural. I shook my head and interrupted him. The college entrance examination, a crucial note in life, is already enough to pay off my debt to you. Plus all those things you asked me to do before. We'll be even. Otherwise, there's no room for negotiation regarding the guaranteed admission. Traitor hesitated to speak. The look in his eyes as he looked at me was filled with disappointment and sadness. Finally, heading fulfilled my sigh. He nodded. Phoenix, I thought that between us, we never needed to care about the rewards for our efforts. Since you've always regarded our relationship as a transaction, then I'll grant your wish. Let Viper get the guaranteed admission, and we'll be even. He left in a dejected state. After I got home, I explained the matter of the guaranteed admission to my parents. However, my usually open-minded parents were unyielding on this issue. I didn't want to be called the school director's princess by others anymore, nor did I want to live under my parents' shadow, even in university. After a big argument, I went on a hunger strike to protest. Finally, having fulfilled my I managed to force my parents to agree. I felt completely relaxed and devoted myself to reviewing and consolidating my knowledge. I was determined to prove to everyone in the fairest examination room that all the first-place rankings I had achieved in the grade over the past 3 years were not because of my connections, and that the teachers graded me more leniently. It was the result of my own hard work. It was the fruit of my day and night study. As if I had been studying with my hair tied to the beam and pricking my thigh with an AWL. It was the monument I had carved stroke by stroke, with a determined spirit. I walked into the examination room. When the examination paper was distributed, I skimmed through it as a whole. Just like when I usually did practice questions. I quickly got into the state and wrote with great fluency. Before I knew it, the bell rang for the last 15 minutes. And I still had a little bit of the conclusion of the composition left to write. At that moment, my examination paper was suddenly pulled backward. I was still in a daze and didn't react. Several screams and gasps had already sounded. Rip, a bad premonition suddenly filled my heart. But I didn't look back immediately because I still had to abide by the rules of the college entrance examination. But the invigilator strode over, her face full of shock and panic. As she passed by me, a trace of pity flashed in her eyes. Only then did I look back along with her gaze. My 3 years of hard work had turned into pieces of paper scattered all over the ground. What followed was a chaotic mess. I can't remember clearly how that girl was taken out of the examination room, nor what kind of mood I was in sitting in the examination room during the last 15 minutes. The huge shock of the sudden change made it impossible for me to accept it all at once. And I couldn't perform well in the subsequent subjects at all. The news that someone's examination paper was torn in the first session of the college entrance examination had spread across the country. My parents, who had heard the news, protected me well. Since the reporters couldn't find me, they turned to interview the girl who had torn the examination paper. She was a girl I had no impression of. Her originally stunned expression became extremely pitiful the moment she saw the camera. Tears welled up in her eyes. And she said, trembling, I didn't do it on purpose. I was just impulsive. Phoenix has been bullying me for 3 years in high school, relying on her parents who are school directors. For 3 whole years. I haven't slept on a clean bed once. Every time my exercise book would disappear without a trace. She stammered as she recounted my evil deeds. This national live broadcast made the news spread even more quickly. Before I even got home, the phone numbers and addresses of my whole family had already been made public on the internet. Even the neighbors would shake their heads in disdain and call away their dogs when we passed by. My parents naturally didn't believe her one-sided story and asked the school to clarify the matter. However, the school, which was usually very efficient, kept making excuses, only repeating things like, within 3 days. It will be done soon, having fulfilled my session. And, almost there. The excuse was that the college entrance examination work hadn't ended yet. I stayed at home in a daze, not daring to open the windows, look at my phone, let alone go out. I even caused my parents' company's stock price to drop. One day, when my mother came back, a radical male driver recognized her and deliberately changed lanes to force my mother to stop in the middle of the road. Then he got out of the car and shouted, "Come and take a look, everyone. This is the mother of that bullying girl, who is a school director. Well, she's even driving a BMW. Does having money make you so great? Even with money, you still can't raise a decent child. Women shouldn't be too good at making money. Otherwise, the children they give birth to will be uneducated." My mother was so angry that she was shaking. The onlookers treated her and the car like a sideshow. But she was a person of integrity and couldn't get out of the car and scold him back in the middle of the road. She could only wait patiently until the law enforcement officers arrived. The road was cleared. And my mother didn't ask for compensation but had the man detained for half a month. But this incident also had a great impact on my mother. She was so angry that her liver ached for several days. They couldn't avoid looking at their phones and computers. So they could only continue to deal with official business while facing countless rumors and slurs every day. I originally wanted to try to start over. The knowledge was still mine. And they couldn't erase or take it away. But all the sounds related to paper had become my nightmare. The rustling sound of pages being turned, the hissing sound of nails scratching the spine of the book, and the most familiar sound of all, the sound of the pen tip rubbing against the paper as I wrote. I tried to overcome it. But the more I deliberately ignored it, the clearer it became. The suffocation from all directions, and the all-pervasive public opinion came at me together, pushing me down into the abyss. Until Traitor asked me out after a long time. Although my parents were tired, they were still concerned about my situation. Since I hadn't stepped out of the room for almost a month, they asked a good friend to secretly send me out. I secretly complained about my parents for meddling. But the blinding sunlight did dispel some of the darkness in my heart. But the next second, when I saw the people beside Traitor, I couldn't smile at all. "Yo, Traitor. You have a good memory. I almost forgot that there was such a top student in our class. Didn't we agree that those of us who were sure to get into key universities would have a dinner together? Why did you invite her? It's unnecessary." Viper behind Traitor interrupted their discussion with a faint smile. "Oh. Stop talking. You guys. If Phoenix hadn't given the guaranteed admission quota to me, she would definitely be able to be with us too." Alay sneered disaffably. "She could only rely on the guaranteed admission. Without it, she's nothing. In the 3 years of high school, she really thought she was something. We even made a bet to see how she would perform in the college entrance examination. In the end, her paper was torn. It's so boring. In order to avoid being noticed, I wrapped myself up tightly in the nearly 40-degree summer heat. But even so, I couldn't stop the cold sweat from breaking out all over my body when I heard them slander me wantonly. Traitor. If you asked me out just to let your good friends laugh at me to my face, then I misjudged you, I said. I suppressed my nausea and turned around to leave. Traitor was about to step forward and grab me, but Viper took the initiative to stand up. Brother. Let me talk to Phoenix. She must be blaming me for taking her guaranteed admission quota. I'll just go and apologize to her. Traitor said worriedly. Don't spoil her. She's been like that since she was a child. Always being petty. When I came to my senses, I was already standing on the rooftop of the building. Viper's voice sounded from behind me. Thank you, Phoenix. Your guaranteed admission quota really helped me a lot. I turned around and looked at her without any emotion. Seeing that I didn't react, she continued talking to herself. But you shouldn't have done it. You shouldn't have made my brother look so embarrassed. He was in a daze when he came back that day. When I asked him what was wrong, he wouldn't say anything. It must be you. You must have done something to my brother to make you willing to give up the guaranteed admission quota. I specially arranged for someone to tear your examination paper and smear you. Anyone who makes my brother sad deserves to die. Humph. The Traitor family is already the biggest school director. Your parents' stock prices have dropped again and again. How could the school speak up for you? How does it feel to be scolded to your face? Anyway, heading till Silwed session. After the truth comes out, your life will already be ruined. I expressionlessly took out the voice recorder from my chest and pressed the pause button. Oh. Viper's expression immediately twisted. She pounced on me fiercely. But I resolutely took a step backward into the air. The voice recorder was protected in my arms and wouldn't be harmed at all. Thanks to her. The truth would soon be revealed, and my parents would soon be out of this dark time. But she was right. My life was indeed already ruined. But as long as I died like this, her life wouldn't be easy either. Under her terrified gaze, I calmly closed my eyes. But still, I was really unwilling. Phoenix. Your grades are already good enough to get into Tsinghua University and Peking University. Just give the guaranteed admission quota to Viper. The familiar words rang in my ears. I opened my eyes and was stunned. I immediately shook off Traitor's hand. The first thing I did was to pat myself all over to see if I was missing any body parts. The second thing I did was to turn around and leave, completely ignoring Traitor's calls. The Traitor got anxious and grabbed my wrist again. Half pleading and half forcing, Phoenix. This is the last time. Okay? Think about the primary school summer camp. You secretly went to see the fireflies at night and fell off a cliff. It was me who found you and carried you out step by step. I'm really happy to have you as a friend. Shouldn't friends understand and help each other? Your grades have always been stably the first. Getting into Tsinghua University and Peking University is a piece of cake. Just give the recommendation quota to Viper. After the college entrance examination, I promised to find time to go on a trip to Sichuan, Tibet with you. Even though I had no intention of listening to his nonsense and didn't want to talk to him more at the moment. Just standing there in a stalemate would only waste my precious review time. I hid my emotions deep in my heart and forced a polite smile. I promise you that the final decision still lies with my parents. I'll try my best. Upon hearing this, the Traitor immediately let go of my hand. Phoenix. I knew you would definitely help me. As long as you, the precious daughter, speak up, Auntie and Uncle will surely agree. Okay. It's fine. I'm going home now. Just kidding. If I hadn't experienced it once before, I would have also taken it for granted that my parents would definitely agree to my request. After all, it's not a problem for my grades. I just didn't expect that Viper would actually hate me so much that she would find someone to tear up my examination paper during the college entrance examination. What did she say again? Was the Traitor really embarrassed after meeting me? Did she suspect what I said or did to the Traitor? Remembering this, I couldn't help but stop in my tracks. Somehow, I followed the Traitor's back. even in my previous life. I don't think I said anything too harsh. It couldn't be that just because I said I would give up the quota and we would be eaten that it upset him. Right? Is he so easily provoked? Then it's just right for me to see if there's anything else that can really make him lose his temper. After turning the corner, the traitor's figure stopped. I quickly shrank into the darkness. It took me a while to make out that the person in front was Knight. I was taken aback. Weren't they always at odds with each other? The second young master of the Liu family is a well-known playboy. And he also has a share of the recommendation quota. It's such a dark and windy night. Could it be that the traitor has made a backup plan and is going to ask Knight for a recommendation quota? And I quickly dismissed this absurd idea. The Liu family's influence is already at the military and political level. We children from business families are like upstarts in front of them. How could the traitor dare to have such thoughts? What are you doing here? The traitor asked unhappily. But there was clearly a trace of panic in his tone. Although I was a bit far away, it was very quiet at night with no one around, so I could still hear their conversation clearly. Knight took out a stack of documents from inside his draped school uniform and smiled contemptuously. Didn't you always ask me to produce evidence? Well, although it happened a long time ago. Guess how many witnesses I found? The traitor shrank back immediately, looking both scared and as if he wanted to rush up and grab the documents. Unfortunately, the crucial part was a bit vague, and I didn't understand what they were saying. Student Liu. What happened in our childhood is already in the past, even if you can find witnesses. They were just half-grown children at that time. Their testimony and memories are not reliable. Oh? So, you finally admit it? His face suddenly emerged from the illuminated area of the street lamp, casting a shadow. Anyway, I'm just telling you this. As for why I went through so much trouble to find all this, it's naturally to reveal the truth. I don't care if they are real or fake, young or old. Those who deceive women will never end well. Just wait for her to see through your true colors tomorrow. After saying that, regardless of the traitor's expression or reaction, he casually flicked his school uniform and left. The traitor, who had been in a good mood originally, suddenly became dejected. I watched as he took out his phone, typed something and then deleted it, kept swiping the screen, and finally gave up in frustration. When I saw him leave, I also turned around and went home, unable to hold back the smile on my lips. Oh dear. I accidentally heard a big secret. I didn't expect that this scumbag still had a guilty conscience hidden. He made that crazy woman Viper come after me. This time, I will definitely make them fall into eternal damnation. I'll slap everyone in the face hard. The next day, having fulfilled my obsession, I had a serious discussion with my parents about the recommendation matters and then went to school happily as usual. While reflecting on my rebellious thoughts from my previous life, I took my seat. The traitor and Viper entered the classroom one after another. The former instinctively looked at me, but found that I didn't even glance at him. The latter took all this in and started a conversation with me. Sister Phoenix. You've already got the recommendation. But you still come to the classroom so early. It won't matter if you slack off a bit. In my previous life, not only did I have a big fight with my parents and was in an extremely gloomy mood, but after hearing her sarcastic words, I was naturally angry and immediately retorted, I can still get into a good university without the recommendation. You're just slacking off and making your brother clean up your mess. What right do you have to talk to me like this? The traitor's face changed. He was just about to speak when he was interrupted by Viper's aggrieved voice. Sister Phoenix. I didn't expect you to look down on someone like me with poor grades so much. Yes. I don't have as much power or money as your family. I don't have parents who are school board members to help me get the recommendation. I don't have the resources to hire top private tutors for one-on-one lessons either. But I've also studied hard and strived to make progress at school. You saying this to me, I also have my dignity. Wah! With tears in her eyes, she rushed out of the classroom. The traitor even left with the words, "It's really true that you're a school board princess," and followed her out. The other classmates in the classroom also turned cold towards me. A few little hooligan girls sneered beside me. I've always said she's arrogant. Who knows how the teacher grades her every time she gets the first place? Are you crazy? Her parents are school board members. They'll expel you if you dare to talk nonsense. What the teacher said is really right. Academic qualifications and character are two different things. Look at our top student. How much she looks down on us. At that time, I was full of anger and too lazy to defend myself over such a trivial matter. So, I just ran back in a fit of anger and went on a complete hunger strike to force my parents to cancel my recommendation quota. Now that I think about it, I was led by Viper to say the words she wanted me to say a long time ago. And then she distorted and misinterpreted them. This not only made me into the arrogant and incompetent person they said I was, relying entirely on my parents, but also established Viper's innocent little white flower image. It also conveniently laid a big trap for the final accusation of cyberbullying against me, causing none of the classmates to stand up for me on their own initiative. All of this was the doing of Viper. And Viper's targeting and hostility originated from this idiot, the traitor. The funny thing is that I always obeyed the traitor just because of his saving my life. I didn't expect that both of these siblings thought I was really interested in him. One wants to manipulate me for the rest of my life because of the favor of saving my life, and the other received my favor but in turn ruined my life. It was really a waste of my recommendation quota. It would have been better to give it to the 3 flowers senior in the school than to these 2 beasts. With so many thoughts running through my mind, I came back to the present and smiled at the hypocritical Viper. Whether there's a recommendation or not, the final college entrance examination is the time to show one's true abilities. If you want to get a few more points, you can get up early and do morning reading with me. I'll teach you my unique study methods. Viper, who was waiting for me to refuse, widened her eyes in surprise. But soon she found a breakthrough and frowned stubbornly, saying, "Sister Phoenix is just making fun of me again. You know very well that my grades are not as good as yours. There are only about 20 days left until the college entrance examination. And you're still making fun of me like this. I stopped looking at her and instead pulled out the materials I had sorted out overnight from my desk drawer and shouted loudly, "Classmates! These are the most comprehensive frequently tested points and scoring question types in Chinese that I've sorted out after 3 years of exams. Every question is the essence of the essence. There are only 20 copies available. They're free for the taking." Everyone was confused and didn't know why I, who usually didn't talk much, suddenly had a change of heart and was giving out materials for free. Seeing that no one paid attention to me, Viper flashed a trace of pride in her eyes and quickly regained her vulnerable and delicate appearance to persuade me, "Sister Phoenix, I know you value grades the most, but you can't just use such random things to deal with your classmates." Alay happened to enter the classroom at this moment. After understanding what was going on, he sneered and said, "Does a good student have such a kind heart? Give me a copy. I want to see what tricks you're playing." He is a genius from an ordinary family. He has always been unable to stand the fact that I have an abundance of educational resources and have occupied the precious guaranteed admission quota. Most likely, Viper has been instigating him behind the scenes. Under Viper's veiled sarcasm, everyone was originally waiting for Alay to slap me in the face. But his expression became more and more serious and shocked as he browsed through the materials in detail. Viper didn't notice this detail and kept saying, "Alay, you don't have to be afraid. Even though Sister Phoenix has connections in her family, she won't do anything to you if you tell the truth. These things that are just made up casually aren't worth. Can you give me one more copy?" Viper stopped talking and looked at us in disbelief. She even wanted to come over and take my materials. I took a small step back, and Alay took the initiative to stand between us. He repeated again, "Student Phoenix, could you please give me one more copy? I have a good friend who should also need it." I smiled slightly, "Of course. But you're not allowed to spread it without my permission." Alay nodded repeatedly, and there was an uncontrollable enthusiasm in his eyes. "Don't worry. I certainly know the value of these materials. The more people know about it, the more competitive pressure there will be. If you hadn't already announced it, I would have wanted to keep all 20 copies for myself. Thank you so much." He took the other copy and left in a hurry. Presumably, he was going to give it to his friend. After he left, the silent classroom suddenly became as lively as boiling water. Everyone rushed to my side. Phoenix. I've never slandered or insulted you. Give me a copy. I'll be your servant after the college entrance examination. Phoenix. I have an old family to support and a big family relying on me to get into a key university. Give me a copy to learn from. I promise I'll only study it under the covers. The 18 copies were quickly taken. Those who got them were overjoyed. And those who didn't were disappointed. I added, although there are only about 20 days left. These materials can conservatively increase your score by 10 points. Those who didn't get them don't have to worry. If you're willing to do morning reading with me, you can also get those 10 points. Now everyone cheered, completely ignoring my previous bad image. I added one last sentence. I'll also sort out the materials for the remaining subjects as soon as possible. It's a pity that if it were for the obstruction of classmate Viper, I could have let everyone get these materials earlier. I also tried once before. But it seemed that not many people were willing to look at the knowledge points I sorted out. Viper's expression changed immediately. When did I stop you? I interrupted her again. Didn't you just say that my materials were just made up casually? Oh, could it be that you said that on purpose because you want to take my materials for yourself? Everyone suddenly realized what was going on. The little delinquent girl from the previous life sneered angrily. No wonder you've been speaking ill of Phoenix in front of us. So you wanted to embezzle them all by yourself, right? It's true that you can't judge a person by their appearance. Those who have got the materials should keep an eye on them. Don't let Viper steal, snatch, or destroy them. As soon as these words were spoken, those who had got the materials quickly hid them. And the looks in their eyes when they looked at Viper were filled with suspicion and disgust. Viper was so angry that she couldn't maintain her innocent girl persona anymore. She stamped her feet hard, squeezed out to tears, and ran away. But this time, Traitor didn't run out after her. Instead, he came up to me. Phoenix. Give me and Viper 2 more copies. It can be regarded as an apology to her, me, other classmates who didn't get the materials. Before I could start scolding, the classmates had already started scolding on my behalf. Traitor. Are you crazy? Why should Phoenix apologize to Viper? If it weren't for Viper's outburst, we would have already got the exclusive materials of the top students. It's more appropriate for Viper to apologize to the top student. Why should you two get 2 copies? It's already said that there are only 20 copies. If you want more, you have to join the morning reading. What kind of attitude is this? You want both face and benefits and also want to get something for nothing. Disgusting. Traitor was so embarrassed by what they said that he turned around and morally kidnapped me. Phoenix. I once saved your life. Won't you even give me a simple copy of the materials? Is this how you treat your savior? Everyone didn't expect that there was such a story between us. And they immediately fell silent and waited for my answer. I sneered coldly. He had used this to blackmail me for a full 10 years. From covering up his fights and brawls, to dealing with his messy love affairs. From helping him cheat and taking the blame, to giving unconditionally for him. He seemed to really think that I should obey him all my life. And he also thought that I would always be the Phoenix who was played around by their brother and sister. In the past, I really didn't want to give others a chance to gossip and become the ungrateful person in Traitor's words. So I never took the initiative to mention what I had done for him. But now my eyes turned red. We clearly reached an agreement last night. I will discuss with my parents to exchange the guaranteed admission quota for Viper. And your favor of saving my life will be repaid from then on. Why are you still pestering me now? Just because I'm easy to talk to, and you can manipulate me? Everyone's expressions suddenly became very interesting. What a big piece of gossip. And this gossip was really shocking. The guaranteed admission quota for the college entrance examination was equivalent to a backup for the turning point of life. It was more than enough compared to the favor of saving a life. Traitor obviously didn't expect that I would expose this. But in the current situation, he didn't have a chance to quibble. He could only slip away first and think about it later. But just as he managed to push through the crowd and squeeze to the door, he bumped into the person he least wanted to see. Knight grabbed him and carried him to the podium. Don't be in a hurry to run away. There's still the matter of your favor of saving a life that hasn't been made clear enough. Shut up. The grade director and the head teacher appeared at the classroom door together, with the crying Viper following behind them. I looked at the clock on the blackboard. It was already 6:30. And the morning self-study time in the school had started. The other classmates took their seats one after another. Traitor and Knight were separated. The head teacher gave Traitor a mild scolding and asked the brother and sister to return to their seats. Knight was dragged out by the grade director by the ear. We could vaguely hear words like, "You've got the guts to make trouble in another class. I'll tell your parents to come and pick you up. And you're going to drive me crazy." My classmates and I were just as curious about who this grade director was. But soon the importance of studying outweighed our gossiping minds. A few days later, on the day when the postgraduate exemption quota was supposed to be announced, the school announced, in order to avoid excessive fluctuations in the mentality of all candidates, the announcement of the postgraduate exemption quota will be postponed. It is hoped that all candidates can get rid of distractions and prepare for the exam seriously. These days, Traitor had been trying every means to pester me. But he was driven back by the classmates whom I had bribed with the materials. To my surprise, there was a letter in my desk drawer. The letter paper was the test paper uniformly distributed by the school, and the handwriting on it was a bit messy. It asked me to go to the small garden by the ancient poetry wall before school was over today, saying that there was something very important to tell me. I remembered that I had also received this letter in my previous life. But at that time, driven by the pressure, I was so focused on my studies that I directly regarded this letter as a love letter or something similar. I threw it into the trash can without even looking at the back. Later, the sharp-eyed viper fished it out and, after reading half of it, said meaningfully, Oh, Sister Phoenix. Even if you've already been internally decided for something, you shouldn't still be having dealings with people of unknown origin at this crucial moment." As a result, the classmates who heard this had an even worse impression of me. And it even reached the ears of the teacher later. The teacher specially gave me an extra half-hour scolding after the evening self-study. But this time, I read it carefully without missing a single word. The signature at the end was the character Lou. I immediately understood. Oh. It's Knight again. What is this? Is it a love letter written to the god of learning? Spark bounced up to me and looked at it curiously. My new desk mate, who had always been in the top 10 of the grade, was assigned to sit next to me at her strong request. I reasonably suspected that she wanted to be the first to get my sorted materials by being close to me. It was said that she even had a small test with a lay for this. The one with the higher score would get the opportunity to be my desk mate. With their joking around, my level had been upgraded from a top student to a god of learning. I smiled, folded the letter paper and put it away. Probably. It's just the last few days. It's normal to be a bit distracted. Spark pouted, and skillfully took out a piece of chocolate from her bag and stuffed it into my hand. The charm of the god of learning is of course irresistible. But if you're worried, just call me anytime. What charm? What are you talking about? Traitor's voice came from the side. Although the guaranteed admission quota hadn't been announced today, there had been a lot of rumors spreading privately. The most popular ones were Phoenix is not in the postgraduate exemption quota, and Viper played dumb and got the guaranteed admission. After all, I had personally said a few days ago that I would exchange the quota. So Traitor seemed to be in a very good mood now. After being given the cold shoulder by everyone a few days ago, he had even threatened to show them who was the number one. Now he seemed to be the one who had got the guaranteed admission. Spark rolled her eyes speechless. Lie. What does it have to do with you? Go and chatter with your green tea sister. Don't bother our god of learning. Traitor's face immediately turned ugly. But when he thought that I had given up the guaranteed admission quota, he forced a smile. I came to thank Phoenix. I've always known that you're a good girl who keeps her promise. Viper's guaranteed admission quota is thanks to you. I still promise you the trip after the college entrance examination. I didn't even bother to stop the pen in my hand while doing the questions. And I didn't even bother to give him a look. Spark, on the other hand, got angry. She slapped the table and asked loudly, "What guaranteed admission quota? Explain it to me clearly." At that time, Spark was in the teacher's office and didn't get the gossip in time. Now, it was like putting Traitor on the fire and roasting him again. This wasn't something to be proud of. Traitor hesitated to speak and gritted his teeth. It has nothing to do with you either. Phoenix and I made an agreement. It was a willing deal. And I didn't force her. I lazily added, really? You also seemed to say at that time that I should think more about how you saved me when we were young. If I didn't agree, wouldn't I be an ungrateful person? Traitor was at a loss for words and his face turned red. I was so used to being submissive that I would never have exposed his faults in front of others like this in the past. Spark wasn't stupid either. And she immediately understood the situation. Good. I didn't expect that you actually blackmailed the god of learning. I'm going to tell the teacher. Give the god of learning's guaranteed admission quota back. After she finished shouting, she ran towards the door. Traitor was so angry that he was afraid that this troublemaker would really make the matter known to everyone. He ignored me and chased after her directly. He couldn't catch the agile Spark. In a fit of desperation, he simply pounced on her. Spark didn't expect that he would really act recklessly and lost her balance, falling straight forward. And where she was about to fall, there were 2 or 3 lost staples. I had just run up to the podium when she fell. I saw Radar lying on the ground in a sorry state. Spark was steadily caught by Alay. And with a little effort, she stood up. She took a few steps back in fear and then bumped into Alay's arms. She immediately jumped 3 feet away. Sorry. Why is it you? Well. Anyway. Thank you, Alay frowned, squatted down and picked up the scattered exercise books while asking, what's going on? You're all about to take the college entrance examination. And you're still so careless? Aren't you afraid of hurting your head or hand? You won't even have a place to cry then. Spark also quickly squatted down to help pick them up. Alay had directly thrown the whole class's exercise books in order to catch her just now. The exercise books, you're so noble. You're so amazing. No one paid attention to Traitor. I directly bypassed him and helped them pick up the books. He limped up to Spark, worried that she would continue to make a fuss. He didn't know how to start a conversation. I secretly laughed in my heart, since you know that this kind of thing isn't something to be proud of. Why did you speak so righteously in front of me? Now, you're suffering for the sake of face. You don't even want to help us pick up the exercise books. Spark didn't care about him at all. I wanted to get justice for the god of learning. You don't even know how much Traitor morally kidnapped the god of learning for his sister. He has no ability but a lot of dirty tricks. Alay didn't look at Traitor. Instead, he kept staring at the angry Spark and occasionally showed a trace of a smile. But his movements became slower and slower. I stood up sharply and said, well, as long as Spark is okay. The class will start soon. Hurry up. I'll go and review first. After saying that, I returned to the classroom and immediately saw Viper rummaging through the trash can. I stood at the door quietly and watched her look disgusted and anxious. It seemed that she didn't find what she wanted in it. Then she quietly came to my desk and reached out her hand. Hey, what are you doing? If you can't get the god of learning's materials, you want to steal them? You've already got the guaranteed admission. And you still want to compete with us? Are you even human? The classmate sitting behind me shouted sternly. Damn it. Viper. The god of learning has already exchanged the guaranteed admission quota with you. Why are you still targeting her? That's too much. The discipline monitor also came over and directly stood between my seat and her. More and more classmates were accusing her. She wanted to play her old tricks again. Just as she filled her eyes with tears, she was pushed aside by Spark, who had just finished picking up the exercise books. Get out of the way. It's really unlucky. Instead of crying all day long, you might as well find a place where no one is around and bury yourself. What do you want to say again? Did Phoenix steal something from you and do you want to get it back? Or do you want to find something that doesn't belong to her and frame her? She deliberately walked around from the back door just to cut Viper off. Sure enough, Viper's words were all preempted by her. She opened her mouth and then closed it. Finally, hadn't so felt leer. After stuttering for a long time, she still ran away under the seemingly friendly but actually intimidating gazes of the classmates. This time she should be really crying. Out of anger. After Spark put the things on the podium, he came back and patted me on the shoulder. Don't let her affect you. Otherwise, she'll achieve her goal. Phoenix. Even though I've always imitated you in studying, I know that your grades are the result of your every step of hard work. Everyone knows how hard you've worked. So what if there's a recommendation quota? You can definitely rely on yourself. The classmate sitting behind me also chimed in. Phoenix. I've always noticed you. I've known from the very beginning how hard you've been working. When I'm studying, you're studying. When I'm distracted, you're still studying. I really rarely see you relaxing. Don't worry. Just let yourself relax properly. Yeah. Nat Zhao guy will definitely have bad luck. If he doesn't, we'll secretly go and give him a good beating. Come on for the college entrance examination. Even if you lose the recommendation quota, you'll definitely make it. Go for it. My pen stopped when Spark started speaking. From the classmate behind me stopping Viper's actions for me to everyone comforting me. Worried that I'd be down because of losing the recommendation quota. This was the first time in 3 years that I truly heard the warmest and most sincere voices of my classmates. It turns out that if I could have changed myself earlier, I could also have gained such sincere friendship. Oh no. I'm kind of feeling like crying. With tears in my eyes, I smiled and said, no matter what the result is, let's go on a trip together after the exam. It's on me. The chattering classmates suddenly fell silent. Spark, who was hugging me, asked in surprise on behalf of everyone. Everyone in the class? I shook my head regretfully. And then quickly replied, of course. Everyone except Traitor and Viper. Everyone cheered loudly together, as if they had already forgotten that the college entrance examination hadn't ended yet. In the midst of the laughter and chatter, a plaintive voice sounded. What about me? What about me? I don't know how much Knight at the door heard. He looked at me pitifully, clinging to the door frame. Viper's behavior of rummaging through the trash can just now has made me certain that she has also been reborn. But Knight, this variable, is someone I didn't have contact with in my previous life. Because of my hunger strike protest, I missed the last days of campus life. What truth does Knight really know? And why does he have to help me? Even this letter, which made Viper rummage through the trash can thoroughly to find, is full of mysteries everywhere. My interaction with him seems to be limited to that summer camp in primary school. But looking into his wet puppy eyes, I don't think he's a bad person. If you want to come, my Phoenix family can afford to invite you. Finally, heading fulfilled while it was time for school to be over. I let out a long sigh of relief. After saying goodbye to everyone, I stepped out of the classroom door. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Viper. She was in a hurry to pack her school bag and pretended to walk towards the staircase on the opposite side of me. I'm even more certain that she has been reborn, since she didn't find the letter. I'm afraid she's already planning to lie in wait for me beside the ancient poetry wall. Whether she wants to report me for having an improper encounter with a boy at night or something else, I don't care. After all, I had expected it. I went straight to class 1 where Knight was and caught him on the spot. Student Lou, there's no need to go there. I'm in a hurry to go home and do some practice questions. Let's talk as we walk. I crossed my arms over my chest and walked towards the school gate without waiting for his refusal. Sure enough, Knight obediently followed behind me and used his eyes to drive away every classmate who wanted to get close. How did you know it was me who wrote the letter? He lowered his voice, not wanting others to hear. There are no other suspects. You don't need to speak so softly. I can't hear you clearly. Just tell me what's going on directly. But I'm afraid they'll misunderstand you. Just like before. He was in a low mood. I stopped in my tracks somehow and turned around to ruffle his hair. Don't be afraid. I'm very strong. As soon as I said this, both he and I were stunned. I was stunned because the action of ruffling his hair felt extremely natural, as if I had often done it before. And the look in his eyes as he stared at me was filled with suppressed emotions, like waves of information that I couldn't understand. Anyway, having fulfilled my obsession, I know you've always had a crush on Traitor. You'll fulfill whatever he asks. But if all of this is because of his deception, would you? He blushed and changed the topic. Then we continued walking side by side as if nothing had happened. I preferred to get to the point directly. He was being a bit too cautious in choosing his words, and I wanted to get straight to the main topic. Knight was very smart. He became serious and said directly, "You participated in a summer camp in the 4th grade of primary school. The life-saving grace that Traitor always talks about means that he saved you when you fell off the cliff at that time. Right?" "Yes." I narrowed my eyes. I didn't expect that the secret of Traitor that night had always wanted to expose was actually related to me. Why was he alone able to find you first and carry you back when no one else had discovered you? Why did you, a 10-year-old child, run outside the camp in the middle of the night? Do you still remember? I don't remember. After I was admitted to the hospital, the doctor said that I was stimulated and my brain activated the automatic protection mechanism, causing me to lose some of my memories. So, as the only person who was present at that time, I just listened to whatever Traitor said. Then you might not believe what I'm going to say next. But I swear every word is true. I also have evidence, although it's just some oral accounts from others. I interrupted his cautiousness again and said firmly, "I believe you. Tell me the truth." Knight's breath caught. A trace of pain flashed in his eyes and then disappeared immediately. "Okay. I'll tell you from the beginning." After that night, time passed even more quickly. The countdown on the blackboard seemed to decrease by 1 day every time I closed and opened my eyes. In the last dozen or so days, almost the whole class followed me to review during morning reading every day. Since the news that Traitor and Viper would definitely get the recommendation quota spread, they didn't even look at the books properly. They were either sleeping all day or disappeared. We were actually glad to have some peace and quiet. Everyone's fighting spirit and ideals were united as one. And we walked together for the last section of the journey on this competitive battlefield where thousands of people were crossing a single plank bridge. On the day of the college entrance examination, we all encouraged each other. I stepped into the examination room again, which had brought me so much pain in my previous life. But this time, I smiled at the girl sitting behind me. She also nodded at me quietly and closed her eyes to rest. This time, I won't step into the same river again. I finished answering the Chinese, mathematics, and English papers smoothly. I walked out of the examination room with a smile and chatted with everyone about our travel plans. I completely ignored Viper's increasingly gloomy expression. I was in an excellent state during the final comprehensive exam. I even answered the questions more smoothly and better than in the previous exam. Before the last 15 minutes, I had almost finished answering, with only the last 2 big questions left. Boom bang. There was another discordant sound beside me. I instinctively protected my examination paper. This time, the person's targeting was even more brazen. That person seemed determined to tear up the answer sheet. Seeing that I was defending it, he simply pushed me to the ground and tore everything on the desk to pieces. I tried hard to hold back the corners of my mouth from curving up, let out a fake scream, and fainted. I originally just wanted to pretend to faint, but I hadn't slept much these days because I was so excited. Although I was in a good state, my body was already under extremely high pressure. Once I fell to the ground, I really fell into a deep sleep. When I woke up again, the first thing I saw was Spark's dense and angry little face. It must be Viper. There's no one else in the whole school who would target Phoenix like this except her. Knight. Isn't your family quite powerful? Now make that person confess who the mastermind is. Knight's helpless voice came. We can't force a confession by torture. Sister. I also know that Viper is definitely involved. But the truth needs evidence. And it takes time to collect evidence. It's only the 2nd day. Alay's voice followed closely. Let's not care about who the mastermind is for now. Anyway, having fulfilled my obsession, the person has been caught. We should think about how to comfort Phoenix. I chimed in. What's there to comfort? I slept really soundly. As soon as I finished speaking, the 3 people in the ward looked at me simultaneously. Knight was the first to react. He took out his phone and made a call. Auntie and uncle. Phoenix is awake. Spark pressed the call bell vigorously. Are you okay? Does your head hurt? Do you remember who I am? Alay held up 2 fingers in front of me. How many is this? Is your vision affected? I had a black line on my face and swatted his hand away. Alay. Stop messing around. I remember everything. I really just took a nap. The nurse came in and examined me. She immediately gave the order for me to be discharged from the hospital. My parents also rushed over. After all, they were busy with the company, so it was normal for them not to be around. But in the car, all three of them looked a bit hesitant to speak. They pushed each other, but no one opened their mouths. Finally, heading so far away, I broke the silence. Just say what you want to say. Why are we acting so distant from each other? Spark scratched his head and stuffed a piece of chocolate into my hand. Do you remember why you fainted? I threw the chocolate into my mouth and chewed it. Yeah, I remember. Someone tore up my answer sheet, and when I tried to protect it, they pushed me. Knight also scratched his head. Then why? Could it be that you're so sad that you can't show it in the short term? It's okay, Phoenix. We still have another chance. It doesn't matter if you repeat the grave for another year. I can accompany you. Alay saw that he was saying more and more outrageous things and quickly interrupted. It's not that bad that you need to repeat the grade. Even if you don't have a score for the last subject, the total score of Phoenix's 3 subjects is still very good. Maybe you can even. I held back from speaking, but my mom couldn't hold it in. She looked at me curiously and asked, "Didn't you tell them that you still have the recommendation quota?" This time, the 3 of them were stunned. I was in a great mood, feeling the breeze blowing across my face. I've never said that the recommendation quota will definitely go to Viper. On the 3rd day after the college entrance examination, the recommendation quota was announced. This time, Viper's stupid face wasn't on it. Instead, it was my confident and proud face as the top student in the grade for 3 years. After the graduation ceremony, our whole class, together with the head teacher, went to have a big meal as a farewell dinner for the teacher. However, Viper didn't show up, and even her graduation certificate was picked up by Traitor on her behalf. I was protected by Spark and Alay, while Traitor's eyes, full of the intention to kill, never left me for a single moment. At the banquet, everyone laughed, cried, made a ruckus and shouted. All the embarrassing and strange stories of the people in the class were brought up and recounted. But when it came to me, Viper was severely scolded for an hour along with it. Finally, having so felt by sigh, the head teacher patted his chest and said with lingering fear, "Fortunately, having fulfilled my obsession, Phoenix got the guaranteed admission. Otherwise, whoever encountered this kind of thing in the end would really be extremely unlucky. Phoenix is such a good talent. It was really a close call." I just smiled and didn't say anything, and only toasted the head teacher with a bottle of 80 calcium milk. Suddenly, someone exclaimed, "Viper is live streaming. What is she saying?" The bullet comments are scrolling so fast. We all took out our phones and watched her crying in a somewhat familiar background about how miserably she had spent the 3 years of high school under my bullying. Now that the college entrance examination was over, she finally no longer feared my oppression and dared to speak out. Hearing her full of lies, someone became hot-blooded and indignant. "Bah! The god of learning disdains to bully you." The reason why the god of learning is the god of learning is that she spends all her time studying. Viper is crazy. The curses of everyone grew louder and louder, and Traitor's face turned darker and darker. But he remained silent all the time, as if waiting for something. Bang, the door of the private room was opened. And it was Viper who was still live streaming. With tears streaming down her face, she pointed the camera at me. "It's her. Phoenix from XX school in City X. Just because her parents are school directors, can they act with impunity? Just because her parents are school directors, can they buy people's hearts? In this class, except for my brother, no one is on my side. He, she, and all of them. They are all accomplices." In our shocked eyes, Traitor stood up in time and stood beside Viper, slowly recounting my crimes of ingratitude. Of course, he omitted some matters related to the exchange of the guaranteed admission quota. I unhurriedly picked up a chopstick of food and watched their performance. Such shoddy lies would collapse on their own. The head teacher seemed to be ignored in the corner. He took out his phone and silently called the parents of the Traitor family. In less than 10 minutes, they arrived at the scene together with Knight. The police officers also arrived at the same time. Viper and Traitor thought that their parents were here to support them, and that the police officers were here to investigate the bullying. Completely ignoring that all of this was fabricated by her. They proudly said to the camera, "See. The bully will eventually be punished." My nightmare finally, unexpectedly. The police officer walked straight towards her, showed his ID and said, "Are you Ms. Viper? We are now investigating your act of instigating others to disrupt the discipline of the examination room. Please come with us." The words she was about to say got stuck in her throat. And the trend of the bullet comments suddenly reversed. After all, this was a real live broadcast. Naturally, Viper refused to comply and tried to hide behind Traitor. Although the parents of the Traitor family were troubled, this kind of family matter was naturally not suitable to be made public. So they stepped forward and tried to mediate. But Knight jumped out with the evidence. It was the evidence that he had promised to make public that night. Uncle Policeman. And Traitor is suspected of an intentional injury case that happened 8 years ago. In the case where Phoenix fell off the cliff back then, I report that it was done by Traitor. Although it was a long time ago, I have collected the testimonies of my classmates who were with us at that time and the people who went mountain running. Yes, heading fulfilled wide sigh. The favor of saving my life that Traitor had been using to restrain me all along was actually a self-directed and self-acted play by him. In order to be able to exploit my value, he tailed me up the mountain, pushed me off a not very high cliff, and then carried me back after finding me when no one was around. Only a few classmates who hadn't fallen asleep soundly heard my scream when they went to relieve themselves together. A group of mountain runners happened to set up camp near the cliff and came to check after hearing the sound, but they only found 2 different sets of footprints. The only conclusive evidence was a short and blurry drone video. I don't know how Knight found it. It was accidentally recorded by a backpacker who wanted to check the road conditions. After discovering someone, the drone stayed and recorded for a while longer. And it happened to capture the scene where Traitor quietly approached me from the blind spot of the vision, and then pushed me with his hand. Looking at this video, I thought to myself, no wonder he also pushed Spark at that time. It turned out that he had been a troublemaker since he was a child. There were 2 reasons why Knight hadn't reported it before. One was that he was worried that the evidence was not sufficient, and the other was that he was worried that my outlook on life, values and worldview would collapse and my will would be broken. So he had endured it until the end of the college entrance examination. But he didn't expect that my focus was not on Traitor, but only on studying. If he had told me earlier, I might not have been so miserable in my previous life. However, I still have to thank him. Although he told me that the fundamental reason why I went up the mountain was also because of him. That night, he also told me the 3rd reason why he didn't want to tell me. Because the cause of all this was that he had a slight fever and wanted to go out to see the stars. His mother, who passed away early, told him that when he felt uncomfortable, he should look up at the sky. And the stars were his mother's eyes. And his mother would always be watching over him. At that time, the best friend I made in the summer camp was him. After hearing his wish, I decided to give him a hand. But a person with a fever couldn't be exposed to the cool wind, so I went to catch some fireflies and bring them back for him to make do with. As a result, this gave Traitor an opportunity. Knight saw the fireflies that I was holding in my hand when I was in a coma. He understood why I would go up the mountain at night regardless of my safety. With a sense of self-blame and guilt, he had been secretly investigating the truth of my falling off the cliff and losing my memory. He also imagined whether I would hate him, the source of all evil, after knowing the truth, and whether I would hate him more or hate Traitor more. Combined with my attitude towards Traitor, he thought that he couldn't compare with Traitor. But he still thought that I had the right to know the truth. As for the consequences, he had been ready to bear them since 8 years ago. Traitor and Viper were taken away together. The parents of the Traitor family also knew Knight's background, so they could only grit their teeth and leave pretending that nothing had happened. The audience who had watched the whole live stream and learned all the details of the incident immediately forgot about the bullying and quickly became interested in the Traitor family. Together with Knight, we had a harmonious meal. Then we made an appointment for the time and itinerary of the class trip. We gathered joyfully and then parted. Summer passed and autumn came. We saw the karst landform described in the books together. checked in at the magnificent Huangjiu waterfall together, and traveled through the long history of Dunhuang together. Finally, after all the partings and reunions, I stood in front of the gate of Tingshui University, with Night by my side as always. Spark and Olay went to Fudan University. They said it was to lay the foundation for future exchanges and cooperation between the North and the South. It was said that both Viper and Traitor were sent to prison, and the Traitor family tried their best but couldn't get them out. Everyone is equal before the law. Viper's instigation was a relatively lighter offense. After she was released earlier than her brother, she went to trouble the boy who exposed her. Unfortunately, having facility, that boy was also not an easy target. He beat her until she twitched and almost sexually assaulted her. If the people of the Traitor family hadn't arrived in time, it would have been another tragedy. Everyone went to their desired universities. Some who were not very satisfied actually went back to repeat their senior year of high school, joking that they would strive to be my junior schoolmates and hope that I would take care of them more at that time.